North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. We report the news honestly, without bias, as often as we can. There is a bias on the broadcast. I'll share it with you in a moment. We report the news without bias. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point that out. We make commentary, which is not news, and then we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. And there is explosive news on the Wells Report today. I want to make something abundantly clear. When I say north to south and coast to coast and around the world, that is not some egocentric statement. Our first story today forced me to go around the world in order to find details about it. It is something that has not been reported in the last 3 days on American news, at least not to my knowledge. And it's inexcusable. Why is it inexcusable? Because it's explosive, because it gives lie to government policies that span the federal government, the state government, county government, and city government. This is amazing. It may be the biggest political scandal of our time. And nobody in the United States of America is reporting it. And I have no idea why. I have double-sourced it. I've gone through all the different journalistic safeguards that I am aware of to be able to make sure that this is the real story. Because there are all kinds of things on the line if it is indeed true. And I'm beginning to believe that it absolutely is. Now, that's just my belief. I don't foist my opinions on you as news. That's not something I do. I report the news. Do I tell you what I think about it? Sure. Is there a bias? Yes. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And truth. I am biased towards truth. And transparency in reporting. And we're not seeing anything on this. We're not seeing any of that on this story. So let me quit babbling and let's get busy. Janine Small is an executive who works for Pfizer. She was testifying during a European Union parliamentary hearing. She was being questioned by the Dutch member of parliament, Rob Roos. In that questioning, Janine Small, Pfizer's president of international development markets, revealed the shocking detail that the Pfizer COVID-19 mRNA vaccine was never tested to determine whether it would prevent transmission of COVID-19. Let me read that to you again. A senior Pfizer executive, Janine Small, has revealed that the Pfizer COVID-19 mRNA vaccine was never tested for transmission prevention. This before the European Parliament, the European Union Parliament. I am going to play it for you right this very minute, and I'm going to let you see it as well. You figure this out for yourself. Here we go.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunization before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. And from that point of view, we had to do everything at risk.
We had to move at the speed of science. No, you had to move at the speed of profit. That's what you had to do. And that is most assuredly not the speed of science. What does this mean? What are the implications? Operation Warp Speed gave Pfizer BioNTech $1.95 billion. And indeed, they went through clinical trials of their vaccine before it entered the U.S. marketplace. If it did not have the capability of stopping transmission of COVID-19, just exactly what were those clinical trials about? What were they testing? A vaccine is supposed to protect you from COVID-19. This vaccine was supposed to protect you from COVID-19. In protecting you from COVID-19, it was supposed to stop transmission. What point is a vaccine worth if it doesn't stop the transmission of the disease? $1.95 billion. What did they clinically trial when they started clinically trialing this vaccine? We know the vaccine had very serious limitations as to whether or not it actually protected people from COVID-19. The President of the United States got 2 Pfizer BioNTech injections and 2 boosters and got COVID-19 twice. $1.95 billion. There's something else. If the Pfizer BioNTech mRNA vaccine did not stop transmission of COVID-19, then why did people lose their jobs because they didn't take the vaccine? That sort of kind of takes the entire idea of this is an epidemic of the unvaccinated and throws it right into the ash heap of history. And once again, this is not being reported in the United States. I couldn't find anything on it. The copy that you just heard me read came from the Minute Mirror. This is Pakistan's independent daily newspaper. As for the video that you just heard, that comes from the Daily Telegraph of Australia. That's where the video came from. Their copy reads as follows. A senior Pfizer executive has admitted the drug company did not know whether its COVID vaccine prevented transmission of the virus when it began rolling out the shots globally. Janine Small, Pfizer's president of international developed markets, was testifying before the European Union Parliament on Monday of this week when she was asked the question by Dutch member of the European Parliament, MEP, Rob Roos. Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no. I'm looking forward to it. Ms. Small, appearing in place of Pfizer chief executive Albert Bourla, who refused to testify. He had been called to testify but pulled out of the hearing earlier this month. She replied the company had to move at the speed of science. Regarding the question around did we know about stopping the immunization before it entered the market? No. We really had to move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. What? We had to move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. The market was us. The market was us. It was a mandate from our government to refuse the vaccine was to become instantly a victim of fascist enforcement. Remember, the vaccine was going to stop you from getting sick and stop the virus. They had no idea whether it did or did not. And once again, that goes back to the clinical trials. If they didn't in the clinical trials, if they did not determine whether or not this thing stopped the transmission of the disease, what did it test? And if indeed it did not stop the transmission of the disease and they had no idea, why did they allow President Biden to say, well, you know what, this is an epidemic of the unvaccinated? Pfizer had no idea whether or not it would stop the transmission of the disease. They had no idea. Did they say, wait a minute, hold it, we're not sure that this vaccine actually stops transmission of the disease? No, they didn't say anything. Why? Because they'd gotten $1.95 billion from the U.S. government for a vaccine that they delivered and didn't know enough about. This is fraud. The headline that I would write would be PF Pfizer, PF fraud. This is fraud. This is unbelievable. Not being reported in the United States. Why? Because we're within 30 days of an election. That's why. Okay, who's responsible in the American political process? Actually, nobody. Nobody. President Trump was told that this was the vaccine, use it. President Biden was told this was the vaccine, use it. They were so sure that what Pfizer had given was worthwhile, that would actually stop the disease. They said it over and over and over and over again, and Pfizer didn't lift a finger to disabuse the people of the United States, let alone the government that had just given them $1.95 billion, of the fact that they had no idea whether that vaccine would actually stop the transmission of the virus. So what did they do? They put it out there because, as it says, we had to move at the speed of science to understand what was taking place in the market. Freudian slip there. They had to move at the speed of profit to really understand what was taking place in the market. We had to move at the speed of science. In other words, we had to get that shot out there as quickly as possible to understand what was taking place in the market. In other words, we can't tell you whether this works or not. We have to give it to you before we can tell you whether it works. Not being reported in America by anyone. Actually, that's not true. It was reported by Tucker Carlson on Fox News and went nowhere. You have to take this shot or you're going to lose your job. Military people losing their job. People losing their jobs. Healthcare workers losing their jobs because they refused to take this vaccine. And Pfizer had no idea whether or not it was going to stop the virus until they put it out and actually used the people of the United States as unwilling, forced test subjects. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I found out that there were a couple of people that indeed reported this in the U.S. One was Tucker Carlson. And I just I was so outraged by the story. I forgot. And so what I want to do is correct that. There's also somebody else that did that. They reported it. Jim Hoft on Gateway Pundit. Breaking big is the headline. Pfizer director admits vaccine was never tested on preventing transmission during EU hearing, contrary to previous claims. During a recent COVID-19 European Union hearing, this was in their parliament, Pfizer's president of international developed markets, Janine Small, admitted the vaccine had never been tested on its ability to prevent transmission, contrary to what was previously advertised. Rob Roos, a politician from the Netherlands, who's also a member of the European Parliament, exposed the lie that people from all over the world had been led to believe. If you don't get vaccinated, you're antisocial. This is what the Dutch Prime Minister and Health Minister told us. You don't get vaccinated just for yourself, but for others. You do it for all society. That's what they said today. It turns out to be complete nonsense, says Roos. In a COVID hearing in the European Parliament, one of the Pfizer directors just admitted to me that at the time of introduction, the vaccine had never been tested on stopping the transmission of the virus. What was it tested for then? What was it tested for? The vaccine is supposed to control the disease the vaccine is working to control. Hello? In one of the most atrocious crimes against humanity, all the governments worked together with Big Pharma and Big Tech to deceive the general public into taking the COVID shot. This, according to copy from Jim Hoft. In one of the most atrocious crimes against humanity, all the governments worked together with Big Pharma and Big Tech to deceive the general public into taking the COVID shot. They lied to us. They coerced millions of people into being vaccinated on the lie of preventing transmission. This removed the entire legal basis for the covert passport. In other words, in a lot of places, you had to have a COVID passport, not covert, COVID passport. The COVID passport led to massive institutional discrimination. People lost access to essential parts of society. Roos said, it's shocking, even criminal. During the hearing, when asked by Ross if the Pfizer vaccine tested on stopping transmission of the virus before it entered the market, Janine Small responded, regarding the question, did we know about stopping the immunization before it entered the market? No. We have to really move at the speed of science to really understand what's taking place in the market. In other words, we can't tell you whether it stops the disease until we give it to everyone. Oh, that's flipping great. That is absolutely outrageous. Then Hoft says, remember when globalists and elites told us to take the vaccine to stop the transmission? This is scandalous. No, it's not. It's criminal. We know the vaccine will not stop the infection. It's also not safe and effective. The Florida Attorney General. By the way, that was Fauci. We know the vaccine will not stop the infection. It's also not safe and effective. Actually, no, that's Hoft. Fauci said the vaccine doesn't work overly well. Florida Surgeon General released a shocking report last Friday. Dr. Joseph Ladapo said there was an 84% increase in the incidence of cardiac-related death among males 18 to 39. The story is falling apart at the seams. And so is all of the absolute fascistic demands by governments to take this shot. So just exactly what did they give us? If it doesn't do anything, if it doesn't stop COVID-19 transmission, what does it stop? You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news, the real news. We analyze it for fact and bias. We comment. We debate. This is beyond shocking. This if you just joined us, Monday, a Pfizer executive told the European Parliament that they had not clinically tested the COVID-19 vaccination to see whether or not it actually stopped transmission of COVID-19. If it doesn't stop transmission of COVID-19, then why did we have to take it so that we could say, for example, not be a part of the epidemic of the unvaccinated? They didn't know when they foisted it on us. The governments didn't know whether or not this was actually going to work. There were clinical trials. There were FDA approvals. What did they approve? What did they approve? I don't know. I was talking to a friend of mine today before I came on the air, and he said, well, they wanted to prove it wouldn't kill people. Well, what else could they prove? Is it safe and effective? At doing what? Well, does it safe and effective from you catching the virus? Well, I sure hope so. But you'd think they'd also be testing whether or not it actually stopped transmission of the virus. Because that's what we were told. Fauci told us, Biden told us, this is absolutely an epidemic of the unvaccinated. And they had no idea whether it was or wasn't. People lost their jobs because they wouldn't take this damn thing. I took it. I took it because it was my job to take the damn thing. Somebody's got to do this so that you know what happens and what doesn't happen. I took the Moderna shot. I got the full series, then I got a booster, then I got COVID. And I did it so that I could tell you the story. Did I feel bad? Not at all. Did I have any kind of side effects? Absolutely nothing. The only problem with my series, as I've told you before, the guy that gave me the second shot apparently was, mad at me for some reason, and he jabbed me like that, and it hurt. I said, dude, really? That was the only thing. Will anyone be held accountable? Well, so far, you can barely find the story anywhere. I did a search on Google. Guess where? Google. I did a search on Google, and the Gateway Pundit story didn't come up. The Australia story came up. The Minute Mirror story came up. From Pakistan. Did the New York Times story about this come up? No, because there isn't one. How about the USA Today story on it? No, there isn't one. LA Times, Chicago Tribune, ABC, NBC, CBS, there isn't one. Fox, Tucker Carlson, Gateway Pundit. By the way, I had to go and search elsewhere to find the Tucker Carlson story. It's not on the Fox News website. Why? Well, maybe this will give us a clue as to why we didn't hear anything about this. FDA authorizes bivalent COVID-19 boosters for children aged 5 to 11. Children ages 5 to 11 are now eligible to receive a COVID-19 booster aimed at both the original virus that causes COVID-19 and the Omicron BA.4 and BA.5 variants. The Food and Drug Administration authorized the boosters this morning. The story I just gave you was 2 days old. FDA approved it this morning. Huh? By the way, the authorized boosters are from both Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna. The director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention gave a thumbs up on the shots several hours earlier. Several hours later. The vaccines should become available at area pharmacies and pediatricians' offices. Children are less likely than adults to become severely ill and die of COVID-19 or to suffer from long COVID-19, but that risk isn't zero. Go out there and get your shots. Why not? Because apparently at this particular circumstance, at this particular moment, we are the lab rats of Pfizer BioNTech. Notice that Moderna is completely silent on the issue. Did they test their vaccine to see if it stopped transmission of COVID-19? Since children have gone back to school in person and people are resuming pre-pandemic behaviors and activities, there is potential for increased risk of exposure to the virus that causes COVID-19. This according to Dr. Peter Marks, who heads the FDA's vaccine division, in a statement. We encourage parents to consider primary vaccination for children and follow up with an updated booster dose when eligible. Why? This is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Now remember something. I report the news. I report apparently the news that other people don't report. ABC, NBC, CBS, why aren't they reporting this? New York Times, LA Times, USA Today, why aren't they reporting this? Now I'm going to give you a little behind the scenes thing here, okay? This is not the first time that I have reported stories that the mainstream media did not report. And the same thing always happens. And this is why I'm telling you this. I literally have sleepless nights wondering whether or not ABC, CBS, NBC, New York Times, LA Times, CNN, I literally wonder whether they know something I don't and whether or not I gave you bad data or not. I said at the outset of this reporting, I said, I've done my journalistic job. I have gone and found double sources for this. One from Pakistan and one from Australia. Are you flipping kidding? Subsequently, I found the article in Gateway Pundit. And I had forgotten about Tucker Carlson doing this on Tucker Carlson Tonight on Fox. At the very least, they experimented on us. At the very least, they lied by omission after hearing the president and everybody in the news media say this will stop COVID-19. The transmission of COVID-19. They said it would stop it. Well, guess what? Pfizer BioNTech had no idea whether it would or wouldn't, and did not refute the statements being made. The story comes out on Monday. Goes absolutely nowhere because Wednesday the FDA approves, boosters for kids 5 to 11. Kids, by the way, as we know, are extremely less likely to have any problems with COVID-19 whatsoever. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. So I'm sitting here, just to give you another example, like I'm going to have a sleepless night tonight, wondering whether or not ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, New York Times, LA Times, blah, 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 whether or not they know something I don't. I'm also wondering whether or not YouTube is going to say, my God, that's disinformation. I don't think so. At this particular moment, I have 4 sources for this story. 4 Different ones. I have 4 different stories. Am I giving you disinformation? No. I'm giving you information. Do I have icy gut ball? Because I'm not... I'm really concerned that I might have missed something? Yes. But this has happened before, several times. Like, for example, on the story of Nicholas Sandmann. Everybody was running with the story that this kid was pestering this poor Native American when actually it was the other way around. CNN got popped. New York Times got popped. CNN got popped. The Wells Report did not. We reported the story based on what we knew. We knew the kid was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. We knew that he was standing there smiling in front of a Native American who was beating a drum in his face. His high school does what's called the haka, which is a New Zealand Maori tribal chant. And they had just finished that. And that's when the Native American came over to beat his drum. Nicholas Sandmann was turned into a leering, snappy, rotten kid, that needed to be hit in the face, somebody said. I believe that was on CNN. It cost them millions upon millions of dollars. The lawsuits haven't finished yet. But we didn't get popped because we followed journalistic rules, just like I have this time. I'm not making excuses. If I get this wrong, you see, I have the luxury of being able to say, hey, we got this wrong. Because you see, I don't do news with an agenda. I do news and report facts as they come. Donald Trump, $1.95 billion to Pfizer-BioNTech. Did he get screwed? By Pfizer-BioNTech? Maybe. How about Joe Biden? Did he get screwed? Yeah, maybe. Did Pfizer-BioNTech refuse to come out and say, hey, wait a minute, you can't say that because we did not test it? No. Why? It's one of those noble lies that we keep hearing so much about, basically from Anthony Fauci. Don't buy the N95 masks. Goodness gracious, they won't work. We don't want you to buy the N95 masks. Why did he say that? It was a noble lie because we needed N95 masks. Apparently got caught flat-footed without enough of them. And when people started buying them out of Home Depot, for crying out loud, they had to stop that so we could get them in the hands of caregivers. It was a noble lie. No, it was just a lie. One of many. Now, just like I always do when I report this story, just to be fair and balanced, remember, this was new. These people were making decisions on the fly. The statement by Ms. Small from Pfizer, who said, we are moving at the speed of science. That is true, if cynical. In point of fact, they were moving at the speed of profit. And when people started running off at the mouth about an attribute that their vaccine did not possess, they didn't stop it. That's a lie of omission. And that gets perilously close to, if not completely crosses the line of fraud on a $1.95 billion scale. The people that lost their jobs, the people that were intimidated into getting the shot, what did they get? They got a free pass into a gigantic clinical trial that they were forced to take part in. Remember, this was an emergency use authorization. It was an emergency. Everybody get their shots. It's an emergency. This could have been far worse than the disease itself. And oh, by the way, arguably, the lingering problem may indeed be worse than the disease itself. What happens the next time there's this unbelievable virus that comes out of China? You know, it's happened 3 times at this point. Why wouldn't there be another one in about 10 years? Or less? What about the next time? What if the next time is real? And we listen to these people and say, we don't believe you. What about that? You see, the government of the United States must work through truth. And so does the media covering it. Why hasn't that happened? This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Please support this broadcast. Please support the broadcast. Share it with your friends. Subscribe to this broadcast. Hit the like button if you like what we're doing. But for goodness sake, support the broadcast in some way, shape, or form. If you'd like to monetarily, go to patreon.com/the Wells Report. That's Patreon, patreon.com/the Wells Report. This is an independent project. Actually, it's being funded by my wife right now. We are making a little bit of money with it, but I want to assure you that the expenses are somewhere close to 50% of what we take in. It's expensive to do what we do, And we're doing it without the support of the traditional radio station where I do this broadcast on a radio station or 2 or 10 or 50 or 20, whatever. And I get paid. I don't get paid unless you pay me. And that's okay because listeners have always been with me throughout my career, no matter what kind of radio I was doing. But I've been doing the Wells Report for almost 22 years and will always do the Wells Report until I quit. The simple case of the matter is, if you'd like to help us out, we would appreciate it immensely. Go to patreon.com/the Wells Report. And by the way, it's like $1, $2 a month. It is the most cost-effective news broadcast that you have to pay for, even though you don't have to pay for it. At some point, if we get enough people doing it, I'll make the Patreon thing a subscription so that you have to subscribe. But right now we're just trying to get the word out, because we discover and report incredibly complex things, just like we just did. It's horrifying. It's just absolutely horrifying. And why it's not on the front page of every newspaper in America, I have no idea. Speaking of moving at the speed of science, scientists have transplanted human brain cells into the brains of baby rats, where the cells grew and formed connections. It's part of an effort to better study human brain development and diseases affecting the most complex of organs, which makes us who we are, but has long been shrouded in mystery. Many disorders, such as autism and schizophrenia, are likely human, but the human brain certainly has not been very accessible, said Dr. Sergio Pasca. He's a senior author of a study describing the work. Approaches that don't involve taking tissue out of the human brain are promising avenues in trying to tackle these conditions. The research builds upon the team's previous work, creating brain organoids, tiny structures resembling human organs that have also been made to represent others, such as livers, kidneys, prostates, key parts of them. To make the brain organoids, Stanford University scientists transformed human skin cells into stem cells, then coaxed them into becoming several types of brain cells. Those cells multiplied to form organoids resembling the cerebral cortex, the human brain's outermost layer, which plays a key role in things like memory, thinking, learning, reasoning, and emotions. Then they transplanted those organoids into rat pups 2 to 3 days old, a stage where brain connections are still forming. The organoids grew so that they eventually occupied a third of the hemisphere of the rat's brain, where there were implanted. Neurons from the organoids formed working connections within circuits in the brain. And then the little kid said, "Hey, buzz off. I'm working here." Okay, that's not what happened, but I couldn't resist. Then there's this. Brain cells living in a dish can learn how to play Pong, the classic video game, demonstrating intelligent and sentient behavior. This according to Australian neuroscientists. Brett Kagan, who led the study published today in the journal Neuron, told Agence France Presse the findings open a new door of a new type of research in which neurons could one day be used as biological information processors complementing digital computers. Excuse me. What machines can't do is learn things quickly. If you need a machine learning an algorithm to learn something, it requires thousands of data samples and constant run-throughs. But if you ask a human, train a dog can learn a trick in 2 or 3 tries. Neurons are the building blocks of intelligence in all animals, from flies to human. Kagan, the chief scientific officer at the Melbourne-based Cortical Labs, set out to answer the question of whether or not there's a way to harness neurons' inherent intelligence. And so they've got a petri dish playing Pong. Did they name the creature in the petri dish? Yow. If the word Borg popped into your mind when they started talking about having machines and brain cells interacting with each other? You know, I'm not an anti-technology guy, right? But are we going to invent ourselves into oblivion? Are we going to invent ourselves into walking, talking, biomechanical beings? I wonder how long it's going to take. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. This is hour number 1. We only have 2 hours today. I'll explain why in hour number 2, so stay where you are. Back with more in just a moment. All right, dear friends. What an hour of the broadcast. Share it, would you please? Thanks. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We report the news honestly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, not the news, just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And we debate. By all means, join us on this broadcast. It is an important one. And you're going to find out why in just a couple of minutes. If you missed last hour, you need to go back and listen to it. You need to go back and listen to it and check it out, because what we reported regarding the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is monstrous. It's a story that should be on every newspaper front page anywhere in the nation, should lead every newscast, and yet it does not. You'll hear, if you go back last hour, you'll see what I'm talking about. By the way, this is the Wells Report. I wanted to say something quickly. This show will be 2 hours long today, not our normal 3. And the reason is because, well, I'm not going to say exactly why, but I can just tell you it falls under the category happy wife, happy life. Okay? So it's just a family thing that I've got to take care of. And so I will, so that my wife does not kill me. Okay? Just saying. So there is some breaking news. I know I've been an absolute bore when it comes to InfoWars' Alex Jones. I have talked at length about Alex Jones and how his, shall we say, loose journalistic efforts were going to cost him and the United States an awful lot someday, because he just kept getting things wrong. Absolutely, including something that I was involved with that he reported on his show that was completely wrong. I let him know about it too, but he didn't get the message, in case you're wondering. Right, I have no idea why that happened. Let me go back to there. Oh, that's really nice. I love automatic stuff. Hang on just a minute. Let me get this all worked out, because I've got a piece of video here that you need to see, and we'll get there from here. So anyway, that being said, let me explain that that there is breaking news, and this has to do with Alex Jones. Depending on who you talk to, Alex Jones is going to have to pay somewhere along the lines of $965 million in damages to eight Sandy Hook families in his second trial over his hoax regarding the fact that he was sure that the United States government was behind the Sandy Hook shooting. So here is news from CNBC. The conspiracy theorist Alex Jones must pay $965 million to the families of 8 Sandy Hook shooting victims and an FBI agent who responded to the attack for suffering what he called suffering he caused them by spreading lies on the platforms about the 2012 massacre. This, according to a Connecticut jury. Jones faced liability for defamation, international infliction, or intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violations of the state's Unfair Trade Practices Act for creating a fake narrative that the mass shooting was a hoax. The families claimed Jones profited off the lies while they were harassed and abused by those who believed him. For years, Jones peddled the stories on his radio and online show that one of the deadliest school shootings in the United States was synthetic and a false flag operation, that the families of the victims were crisis actors. 20 children, 6 educators were killed after a gunman entered Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, opened fire on December 14th. The trial took place in Waterbury, about 20 miles away. Jones had already been found liable by a judge after refusing to hand over critical evidence before the trial began. 6-member jury was only asked to decide how much Jones should pay. This is the second trial related to his Sandy Hook conspiracy theories. In August, a Texas jury ordered Jones to pay nearly $50 million in damages to Scarlett Lewis and Neil Heslin, whose son Jesse was killed in the massacre. During the closing arguments, Christopher Mate, a lawyer for the families and agents, suggested that Jones should be ordered to pay at least $550 million, saying that the host's Sandy Hook content got an estimated 550 million views from 2012 through 2018. Their lives were shattered by the December 14th, 2012, or the shooting on December 14th, 2012. But Alex Jones made it so they can't escape. Every single one of these families were drowning in grief, and Alex Jones put his foot right on top of them. Jones' attorneys asked for a more moderate verdict, telling jurors to focus on the monetary harm caused to the families. During the 4-week trial, the jury heard emotional testimony from several parents of victims about the enduring harassment, death, and rape threats as a result of Jones' lies. Nicole Hockley, whose 6-year-old son Dylan was killed, testified she keeps knives and a baseball bat by her bed because she fears being attacked. She's taken out a large insurance policy in the event she is killed. I got sent pictures of dead kids because I was told that a crisis actor, I couldn't really know what the dead looked like, so this is what it should look like. It's horrific. I'm going to stop reading. Look, the jobs we do are important. Alex Jones is famous. Nobody has a clue as to who I am. Nobody. But I report the news every day, not some odd delirium of how the government is trying to kill all of us. Oh, believe me, if the government's trying to kill all of us, I will be the first to report it on this broadcast. But I'm going to know that what I'm reporting is true. I'm not going to just pull it out of my orifices. You know, one of the things about this job about getting things wrong and right, they're both equally difficult to deal with. Getting something wrong on this broadcast for me is horrifying. I literally have sleepless nights. I was talking about that last hour. You know, I was talking about this amazing testimony before the European Parliament about how a Pfizer-BioNTech executive or Pfizer executive said we had no idea whether the COVID-19 vaccine that we put out and forced people to take from one end of the world to the other actually stopped the transmission of the disease. ABC's not covering it. ABC, CBS, NBC, nobody's covering it. Fox, Tucker Carlson, Gateway Pundit also covered it. And I covered it. And I keep wondering whether or not I got something wrong because ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, New York Times, nobody's reporting the story. But I'm going to stand by my journalistic efforts because I am not making anything up for the sake of somebody's adrenaline rush. And that's what Alex Jones does. This job of broadcasting requires people to do the right thing. Even though doing the wrong thing will make you famous and make you rich, I'm not rich. I just ask you for a couple of bucks a month. But what I do here is report the news. What he does there is report whatever pops into his head for the effect of revving people up and scaring people to death and denigrating all that is good about this country in an effort to profit from it. And he picked on the wrong people. And they nailed him for it. I don't know how he's going to pay all this stuff. I don't have any idea. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to say, hey, look, if you do this job, you got to remember why you're doing it. Obviously, I'm not doing it for money. But I guess he is. During his divorce trial, he said the whole thing was just a show. He was just playing a part. I'm not playing a part. I don't believe broadcasters should do that. I'm telling you what the truth is, as best as I know it. Not for fame and glory and money, just because I got to sleep at night. I don't know how he does. I can't believe what he put those families through. I think back on all of the boring conversations I had about Alex Jones and how he was just an absolute nightmare of not just an incompetent journalist, but a purposeful muckraking propagandist journalist. And this was before CNN got nailed and NBC got nailed and ABC got nailed and all these people got nailed because of stories that they reported that were simply not true based on politics, based on the Trump administration, based on Trump derangement syndrome. That was before all this. Broadcasters owe you. We owe you to operate in the public interest as a public trustee. This is a fiduciary. To twist everything for the sake of money, fame, notoriety, to twist it into some monstrous lie for the sake of what? Somebody's adrenaline rush? What are you doing? Well, what he's doing is trying to figure out how to pay a couple of $100 million worth of damages. I don't think this is the last trial. He's been nailed twice. I don't know what kind of insurance he had. I don't know whether they can pierce the corporate veil and go after money because of this, because that would be, they'd have to prove negligence for that, and I think they've done it. So Alex Jones has rode the flaming dragon of misinformation, real misinformation, into a spectacular crash that may leave him with absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, I'll just be telling you the news. So let's get back to that. Why don't we? There was a letter some time ago regarding Hunter Biden's laptop. And it was signed by some 50 former U.S. intelligence operators. These agents, these people who work in America's intelligence community. They signed it and said, my golly, this laptop has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. And they kept saying it over and over again. That letter became a political tool. And one of the guys that signed it sat down with Bret Baier on Fox News. Happened yesterday. And I'm going to, again, be a purveyor of free advertising for Fox News and Bret Baier, because the conversation between this former CIA agent and him is worthy of your close attention. And we'll have that for you coming up in just a little bit. My name is John David Wells. This is The Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. This will be an abbreviated version of the broadcast where we're going to be on for 2 hours today. So we got about 40 minutes left, 40 minutes. So we will cover as much news as we possibly can. We've got some explosive news indeed. Former Central Intelligence Agency officer David Priess defended being a signatory on a letter with more than 50 other current and former intel agents and experts who claimed that the New York Post's Hunter Biden laptop bombshell story looked like, quote, Russian information operations, unquote. In October of 2020, the Washington Post broke the story about how then Wilmington computer shopkeeper John Mac Isaac came into possession of the laptop first son Hunter Biden left at his store near Trolley Square. A copy of the hard drive was copied by the purveyor of the computer repair shop and given to the FBI. Another was given to former New York City Republican Mayor Rudy Giuliani. And therein began a tale of, okay, is this an authentic computer? It was refuted by Joe Biden as not being authentic. He said that it was Russian information Russian disinformation rather, over and over and over again. He brought it up in the debate between he and Donald Trump. He referenced this letter by some 50 former and current intel agents. I didn't realize that current guys took part in it. And so what do we have then? Well, what we have is we have this letter, this artifact of American politics. And there were other stories that would follow on this laptop, including some explosive ones by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and other liberal news outlets. Now, I have watched the interview that I'm about to play for you a couple of different times. And there is something there that you need to be aware of, and it has to do with the nature of intelligence operators. And once again, I have to look at this and I have to chuckle, because on one hand, I know what he's doing. And I know that there is a professional basis for what he's doing. And I'm going to explain all of that. But all I can tell you is that David Priess is a guy that you either very much want in that particular game, or someone that you don't want to see coming and you don't want to listen to and you don't want to have anything to do with. It just depends on your point of view. I have learned in my life that, first of all, the intelligence industry is fascinating to me. It's John David Disneyland. In case you wonder what it's like, well, it's sort of like being given a box of jigsaw puzzle pieces. You have no idea how many different jigsaw puzzles there are. You have no idea what the jigsaw puzzle actually ends up looking like. You have no idea what it is because you don't have any real information about it. You just have this box of puzzle parts. And you put them all together as best you possibly can. And you try to find out how many stories or how many jigsaw puzzles you're actually putting together all at the same time. And you know what else? You never exactly get an answer. But there are facts that can be discerned. And if you're saying, wait a minute, that sounds an awful lot about your analysis for fact and bias. Yeah, that's where all that came from. And what you're about to hear him say essentially fits that mold. But there's also something missing. And I'm going to share that with you too. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Stay right where you are. We've got more of this broadcast coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for being here today. Back in a sec. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells on an explosive news day. It has been one of those heart-rending days where you wonder just exactly where the country's headed. Former CIA officer David Priess signed a letter that said that Hunter Biden's laptop was or had all the earmarks of being a Russian disinformation operation. And like I said, he and a bunch of other people signed it. Well, he went on the air with Bret Baier on Special Report last night. And what ended up happening was that Bret talked to him about that letter as he was one of the signatories. And this is how that conversation went.
In October, days before the 2020 election, you signed on to this open letter that was published by Politico. It said, "We write to say that the arrival on the U.S. political scene of emails purportedly belonging to Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, much of it related to his time serving on the board of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma, has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation."
Right.
Why did you sign on to that?
Yeah, because of what it says. It has all the classic earmarks of one of these operations. You'll note elsewhere in the letter, if you read it, that it also says we don't know if this is a Russian operation at all. That has been dramatically changed in the retelling of the story. But the letter is merely pointing out that this is the kind of thing that time after time after time, people who study Russian disinformation, intelligence officers who look at Russian tactics over the long period of time, this is the kind of thing they like to amplify to sow discord within target countries. Now, sometimes that target country is the United States.
Right. Most
often in the Cold War, it was Europe. But the fact is, the tactic is an old one, a tried and true one, and it's been successful in the past.
But in this case, it was not true. It was not true. In fact, the New York Times found that these are authenticated. The Washington Post writes thousands of emails purportedly from the laptop computer of Hunter Biden are authentic communications that can be verified through cryptographic signatures from Google and other technology companies, say two security experts who examined the data. New York Post, who did the story first, says, holy cow, here are these other verifications. And then in the debate, right before the election, now President Biden used it. Take a listen.
Reckless, absolutely reckless. Putin heard this. Our allies and friends heard this. This is truly.
We're talking about the issue
from hell.
President Trump. We're talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
and I have to respond to that,
please,
because look,
there
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what. This is where he's.
So, understanding how you characterize it, but he characterized it differently and used it in a debate just days before an election.
Yeah, I'll let President Biden speak for himself. He's capable of doing that. What I'll do is say that it has all the classic earmarks of a Russian campaign in the way it was disseminated and propagated through media.
Do you regret signing on to the letter?
Oh, absolutely not, because those words are still true.
Do you think
it has all the classic
outcome
earmarks?
Of an election?
Oh, absolutely not. No,
Even though it wasn't true. It had the classic earmarks, but it wasn't true.
What is not true?
That it was Russian disinformation.
That's not what we said in the letter. Read the actual letter, and we said we do not know if this is Russian disinformation.
It has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation.
Exactly. The difference between an information campaign and a disinformation campaign
not get to candidate
and a
Joe
misinformation campaign. It's not my fault if people don't look up definitions.
I know, but the purpose of the letter is to have an effect. And the nuance that you're talking about here never made it to candidate Biden because he said it plainly on a debate stage that obviously affected the dynamic. Yeah. Don't you think?
I would absolutely love for all news media to show nuance on all these issues instead of racing to sound bites. And in this case, some news media race to sound bites. That's not helpful for the American people. And I really wish that people
was helpful for the American people.
Well, instead of quoting one sentence from it, if people actually read maybe an entire paragraph, it shows that we don't know if it's Russian.
It affected anything?
I don't know if it affected anything. We don't analyze American political environments.
We were trying to.
What we were trying to do is point out that this has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information campaign. Not to say it's Russian disinformation, but to say that the propagation through American media and international media has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information campaign because we've seen it over and over and over again. They love to sow these kind of divisions and exacerbate them. That's not American, that's Russian.
I got you.
Yeah.
But it ended up being a Biden information campaign because he used it in the campaign and in that debate.
I encourage you to ask.
Yeah. So what did you just see there? Well, what you saw is one of the hallmarks of American intelligence gathering. You only report what you know to be true. He did not report in that letter signed by 49 other former and current intelligence community operators. He did not say in that report that this was Russian disinformation. What they said was this has all the earmarks of being Russian disinformation. Joe Biden turned it into this is all Russian disinformation. And this operator is saying, no, that's not what we wrote. If you want to get a clarification on that, you're going to have to ask President Biden. In other words, what he's doing is technically correct. And, oh, by the way, from an actual technical U.S. intelligence mode of operation, it's actually right on the button. But it's disingenuous. It's disingenuous, maybe even intellectually dishonest. And he knows exactly what he's doing. David Priess knows exactly what he's doing based on the fact that he doesn't live in a vacuum. He is claiming that he lives in an intelligence vacuum, and all we know is what we said, and it's in that letter, and if somebody else got it wrong, well, that's not our problem. But wait a minute, it affected the election. Not as far as we're concerned. We don't care whether it affected the election. Exactly. And here's the other problem. All of this occurs in the context of the deep state conspiracy, which, by the way, is not a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiratorial fact. The United States intelligence community did not want Joe Biden to lose the 2020 election. He didn't want him to lose. They didn't want Biden to lose. And they did everything they could to throw shade on what was indeed an explosive development having to do with Hunter Biden, his business dealings, and a laptop. There are some 4% of Biden voters that say, you know, if I had known all of this stuff, I wouldn't have voted for Joe Biden. That would have been enough to change the outcome of the 2020 election. But that's not what happened, is it? And by the way, what is the implication regarding American intelligence? Well, all of these guys said, it's got all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Note, they didn't actually lie, but they didn't actually tell the truth either, did they? It has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Yeah. But the thing about it is that, once again, this was dishonesty. And it's one of the great things about propaganda, like I keep saying. The propaganda that I keep saying is that it's not what you add, it's what you take out. It's what you don't report. And in this particular case, what they're saying is, well, we didn't say that. We didn't report that. We just said it had the earmarks of. And that's the exact same thing that they told Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, which is why Facebook immediately jumped to the conclusion that what they needed to do was squash the story, and they did, and somebody else won the election. And then, of course, when anybody brings up the 2020 election, anything that does not go with the orthodoxy gets immediately stomped. They even tried it on YouTube with me until I explained to them that I was simply reporting the news and proved it. Now look, when you start looking at all of these things, what you have to understand is that what this brings up is, again, something else I brought up. These guys are trying to give you a choice. You see, they got this story wrong. Oh, they won't say so. Well, it had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, but it didn't have it this time. But we didn't get it wrong. It still has all the earmarks of it. Oh, really? The drunken stupor in which Hunter Biden goes into the computer repair shop and drops off his laptop and then forgets he put it there. That is a Russian disinformation tactic? Really? Anyway, what it points out is that all these guys got it completely wrong, although technically they didn't. But this is the ability to be soft on the facts and to be extremely precise in your communication. And that's exactly what David Priest was doing. Did the truth out? No. No, didn't at all. And by the way, it also tells you something else about America's intelligence. It tells you that depending on politics, you may or may not get the real truth out of American intelligence. And oh, by the way, Langston, who just asked me, oh, so you believe the deep state is real? Yes, I believe the deep state is real, and this proves it. This absolutely proves it. These people are not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. And when the president got it wrong, they didn't write another letter saying, oh, by the way, the president misinterpreted what we said. They didn't say that until Bret Baier said, oh, by the way, all of these other news stories, prove that this is indeed an authentic laptop. Well, that's not what we said. No, it may not be what you said, but that's how it was used. And to say that somehow you are not responsible is disingenuous. It's disingenuous and throws a pall over what we get for our money when it comes to all of these intelligence community operators. What are we getting? This is how it proves to be a deep state. They will only tell the truth if it's politically expedient. And when it comes to intelligence, that's called cooking the intelligence. And when it comes to cooking the intelligence, that's how you lose the farm. Pun intended. I want to make this abundantly clear. These people that operate in America's intelligence community are brilliant. Brilliant beyond most people's comprehension, brilliant. David Priest is one of those guys. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to do a very subtle cleanup on a mess that he and 49 other former and current intelligence operators foisted on the American people just in time to convince you that maybe there was some doubt regarding Hunter Biden's laptop. Here it is 2 years later, and suddenly Hunter Biden's in trouble with the IRS and in trouble with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF. Is he going to be in trouble for international money laundering? Influence peddling? Who knows? But really all that has to happen is that President Biden get through this next 2 years without being impeached. And that might be a tall order. But look at how the water is muddied based on 2 impeachments of President Trump. The first thing that's going to come out of anybody's mouth when they say, oh, look at these Republicans trying to impeach Joe Biden for influence peddling by his family. It's just political, blah, 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 blah. That's the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth. It was just like what happened with the impeachment of President Clinton, Bill Clinton. He wasn't impeached for having sex with a 20-year-old. I mean, I never hassled him about that. I don't know. They're both over 21. It's behind closed doors. Maybe if it is in the Oval Office, it's behind closed doors. It's none of our business. Okay, it's between he and Hillary, and it's none of our business. What the problem was and what got him impeached was lying in federal court. And you can't have a president lie in federal court. You just can't. You simply can't. So he was impeached. Did they find him guilty? No. In other words, they remove him from office? No. Was that the right end of that? Perhaps. But now what we have is we have this mess. They tried to hang a bunch of stuff on President Biden or President Trump, and they've been unsuccessful so far. They keep trying, though, but they have struck out. What, 4 times in a row now? How many tries is it going to take? How many tries is it going to take to impeach President Joe Biden for influence peddling by his family? And you know, this one's serious enough, they might actually remove him from office. Because these are high crimes and misdemeanors, if true. And once again, the deep state is responsible for that as well, aren't they? See, this is what we call in the intelligence industry playing both ends against the middle for effect. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Something you will not hear in the upcoming public hearing, if that's what it is, of the January 6th committee, has to do with the current trial of the Oath Keepers. I've been talking about the Oath Keepers, and I've been looking around for what they're guilty of. And more than anything, I can say they're guilty of disagreeing with leftist progressive policy. You know, but they're violent and they're just domestic terrorists and so on and so forth. So far, the only real violence that they've been involved in is getting their own butts kicked by mobs while they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But let's not deal with that. Let's go ahead and just go to the actual transcript as reported by the Epoch Times of the Oath Keepers trial unfolding right now in Washington, D.C. An FBI agent testified yesterday he was not aware of any direct communications involving Oath Keepers that would directly show they planned to storm the Capitol on January 6th and interfere with the certification of the Electoral College vote. FBI Special Agent Justin Eller testified as part of the seditious conspiracy trial against 4 Oath Keepers members in a federal court in Washington. A defense lawyer asked Eller if, from all the Oath Keepers members and affiliates' communications he reviewed, were there any that specifically read the Oath Keepers were going to storm the Capitol? FBI agent Eller said no. The defense attorney then asked if there were any communications to prove the Oath Keepers planned to stop the certification of Electoral College votes on January 6th. No, said Eller. And then he amended it with directly. Well, you're not actually charging him with indirect seditious conspiracy. You're charging them with seditious conspiracy. That requires communication of a specific kind. And yes, it is direct. By the way, are there any communications that the Oath Keepers plan to stop the certification of electoral votes on January 6th? No. Eller was initially assigned to investigate defendant Jessica Watkins in January of 2021. He said he interviewed about 20 to 30 individuals during his investigation. Defense attorney David Fisher asked Eller if he preferred to spend a substantial amount of time before charging someone or do a quick investigation to arrest. Eller said he had no preference. I only gather information, facts, and evidence and turn it over to my supervisor. I was just following orders. The defense attorney asked Eller if he'd asked the people he interviewed if the Oath Keepers conspired to storm the Capitol on January 6th. Eller responded yes. The attorney then asked, did you ask if they stopped the certification of the Electoral College votes? And he said, yes, possibly. Prosecutor Catherine Rakowski showed the jury messages from Watkins from the Parler social media app. On those messages, Watkins is trying to recruit people with a DD-214 to train with them. The special agent explained that a DD-214 is a document about a person's training and their military accomplishments. They have it as a DD-14. That's not it. It's DD-214. Eller said he obtained the direct messages through Parler through a search warrant. Except he didn't find anything. But wait, there's more. This from Yahoo News. A Federal Bureau of Investigation agent testified yesterday in the seditious conspiracy trial of members of the Oath Keepers militia that fewer than 24 members of the far-right group were actually present in the nation's capital when supporters of then-President Donald Trump engaged in a riot to try to block the Electoral College certification of Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election. Well, wait a minute. Okay, well, let's just keep going. FBI Special Agent Byron Cody initially told the jury yesterday that approximately 24 to 30 Oath Keepers had traveled to Washington on January 5th and 6th, but over the course of his testimony, he lowered that figure to between 15 and 20. Prosecutors in the case have often portrayed the Oath Keepers as an organization that counts thousands of members across the country and whose leaders, particularly Stuart Rhodes, who, by the way, was standing there like a commanding general watching his troops do their horrifyingly terrible work. All 15 to 20 of them. Yeah, he discussed using violence to extend Trump's tenure as president and block President Biden from replacing him. While cross-examining Cody, one defense lawyer said that in the weeks before January 6th and months afterwards, Rhodes' phone records showed that he was plugged into more than 150 separate chat groups, and that the Oath Keepers believed their membership totaled as many as 40,000, a figure that Cody did not dispute. Yet those figures stood in contrast to the comparatively much smaller number of members who traveled to Washington and participated in the riot. Yeah, the trial is not going well. You know what the best part of the trial is for the prosecution? That it's happening in Washington, D.C. How do you think this trial's going to end? Well, once again, people ask me, gosh, is there a deep state? You want to know my official United States intelligence estimate? Hell yes, there's a deep state. How could there not be? How could there not be? You're listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for watching today. Like I said, this was going to be a little shorter than normal, but we'll be back tomorrow with a full edition of The Wells Report as we continue giving you the news. See you tomorrow. Okie dokie. All right. So, my friends, yeah, that was, it's too bad I don't have another hour because this is a day that you need to have an hour or another hour. There are days when I do the Wells Report where I need 4 or 5 hours. This is one of those days. We'll get to some of it tomorrow. That's what we'll do. We'll get to some of it. Yep. Let's see what else. I think that's about all I have to say there. Yep. Good evening. God bless all y'all. I've got to go do some family business so I have a happy life and a happy wife. So peace, love, joy to all of you all. And I will see you again.